This is IBM Museum. So there was a recent topic on the Vintage Computer Federation about someone looking for a PS2 Model 35SX video driver. And the same planar is used in the Model 40SX as well. But I wanted to go over, I have responded on the forum, and I wanted to also do just a brief video with what I've come up with, showing the aspect of working with that chip and the possibilities that can be done to improve the video performance of that chip so it's capable of higher color depth, as well as some of the other modifications that can be done on the Model 35SX and Model 40SX. I'm just wanting to have a little bit of a brief video here, and I'll have to see kind of how it falls together. I don't want it necessarily being long. It is rather late in the day for the release of a video. I think I've gathered most everything I can to demonstrate things. This is the post itself, and it talks about, and they've gone through and just a beautiful opening response of saying what they have, the model and submodel, how they have the system configured, and what they're looking for. And so there's some responses that are actually fairly good, and they're authentic for the standard configuration of the Model 35SX. And until recently, there's been about a year ago, maybe even slightly over a year, there's been a little bit more that's been discovered on the chipset of that the 35SX and 40SX use, as well as which other models that this same video chip is on. And I've going through and answering, and of course once I'm through with the video and have a video link, I'll go through and release that as well. So I'm going to bring up in fact, let me show. Okay, so here I have a 35SX, and that's a smaller 3x3 desktop case. The 40SX is the slightly larger case that's considered the 5x5 case. And I've covered the case sizes in a previous video showing the Model 56 and the Model 57. It's a comparably similar case between those two models as it is for the 35SX and 40SX. Now, both the 35SX and 40SX are an ISA system because they are below a model number of 50. That's where the microchannel model start is from, a Model 50 and above for the PS2s denoted microchannel. And I have this system opened up as it is, and things kind of splayed out. And I did have to do a little bit of work with it. I had it set aside, and it's kicking up particular errors that I can actually describe and what I'm encountering with this unit. But it's a good demonstration unit, and actually it spans the 35SX by a comparable measure, by all the things I've added, and I'll go through and show those in turn. Now, I didn't have a diskette drive in there, so I've just popped on my little go-to diskette drive. That's a standard, it's a newer model PS2 drive, just 34 pins, power and data put together. But I know those things work, and so whenever I find a system, I put them on there. Now the 35SX and 40SX are able to run the 2.88 megabyte diskette drive. And even you'll see in the 40SX, for it being the larger case and having more 5 1/4 bays, there is even a 5 1/4 inch what they call electronic eject or EE drive that's on those models. And I'll go over the video. I know it's been a long time in many months now that I said I would cover the internal diskette drives, and I still expect to do that. It's just I'm going to have to wait till I kind of have everything together to cover that material as well. So the 35SX, it's a lot like the earlier 8556, that 8500 series PS2 of microchannel, in that it doesn't have, it just has the two forward bays. So normally the top one is for the diskette drive. The lower one is normally a 5 1/4 bay, although much of the time there's a hard drive put in there. And the Model 35SX and 40SX have IDE on the planar, and that's important to note, whereas the Model 56 and 57 for both the 8500 series and 9500 series have SCSI. And so I've gone through, and expanding this unit, I've tried to work with that IDE connection as well. And my intentions with this are to ultimately have a primary drive of a compact flash in there. And the reason that the hard drive is out on top, and that's a 3.2 gigabyte drive. And so you think that has to have what is called the LBA, or long block address support, to support a drive of that size. And I'll show that aspect as well. But I have in that lower bay, I actually have an IDE CD-ROM drive. And it's not visible from this angle, but I have it from that sound card that is installed in that very top adapter slot, with the IDE cable coming off of that. And I think I'll do that in a later portion of the video, of talking about some of the things to that LBA and having that sound card in there with that secondary IDE channel as well. Let's look over the video aspect for now. And in particular, also the 8556 and 8557 do have the same video chip that they use on it. And this is, I have to make sure I don't disturb my tripods that I have set up here for what they're focused in. Now, and let me see if I can I'll just step around like this to kind of point things out. I don't know where my pointer is. I had it earlier. So here is the video chip. And then there's the two VRAM chips. And the two chips together give 256 kilobytes of video memory. And you'll notice that there are the solder pads below that. There's not even sockets for another two chips of that style. And I can probably even show what those chips are. Let me bring up the picture that I took of those. Okay, so that's the chips that are there, the two that are present, and the in case to have two more to fill that area of the solder pads, you would get two of these chips. And hopefully you can find a nice auction out there and get, I think I got 3 original tubes of these originally, and have gone through and haven't even used one of them so far. I've got 2 chips left over. The 2 chips, including the one I took a picture of, they had been, I've got to work with the pins a little bit. And I'll show you, it's probably time to show the adaptation that I've done for those. Okay, so there is the modification that I've done to my 35SX planar. And that multicolored ribbon cable that's right there beside, that's for the diskette drive. And then the IDE drive is the next connection over with that ribbon cable. And there's power connections. The power supply is just ultimately to the upper left of where those video chips would be on this planar. Now, I couldn't find, and even for the model 8556 and 8557, they, using the same video chips, and I may have to go through and see if I can, let me see if I can go through and bring it up on this webcam here. Makes it a little bit easier to see, and I'm going through and I'm blocking the light with my body. Okay, so we've seen this earlier on previous videos. This is an 8556. It's got the 386 SLC CPU under that gold colored heatsink. But there in the center of the screen, you can see the sockets that this planar has for adding VRAM. So at least those sockets are present in the 8500 series Model 56 and 57. And the 9500 series of the Model 56 and 57 has XGA2 video on the planar. So it has a different video for the 9500 series of those models. But it's nice to have these sockets on the Model 56 and 57 that are in the 8500 series for expanding doing the same VRAM expansion. And that video chip is back there, back up here. It's the same chip that's as on the 35SX. Now these sockets are nice in that, and I believe they call these a zip, kind of like a zipper, because it's 2 rows of pins, but they're staggered for each other. And at least these are real nice, and they have wiper contacts for the chips to sit in there. And I looked around for finding some of those sockets, and I couldn't. I found some single row sockets that are ultimately round. And the trouble I have with this is those video RAM chips, they can work their way out or not contact all the points. And so occasionally I have to go through and reseat them, and I may go through and just spend some time and carefully go through and splay out the legs a little bit more and seat them just to make sure that they're making contact and they stay that way. But that's the thing. I didn't get the right sockets for this, and that's how it shows up. Now, what I'm going to do is I do have the system running. Once that VRAM update is done, and if you don't have it, it's just best to go through and use the standard VGA driver in things like Windows 3.1 and its basic video for DOS. But when you add that VRAM expansion, that's where it begins to shine a little bit. And I'm going to go through, I'll bring up the video capture for this unit. And okay. I have to change things around here, but I'll be right back. Okay, so we have the system doing a cold boot. At least it won't go through. There's 16 megabytes of RAM on this unit. Okay, and this is, I had worked around this issue before, but this is happening, this error is happening because of the hard drive. And it's going through, and there's a ROM BIOS extension to identify the hard drive after the system runs through a little bit of the setup and the post information. And what it's saying is that it ultimately doesn't detect a drive, even though the drive is there and functional. And just because and you see it identified there, and you see the size that's identified to the system. And that is from the ROM BIOS extension. Now, I don't have to go through and insert the star diskette. I do have that ready for the system. But if I press F1, the system goes through and boots. And you can go through and pause portions of this video to see what flashes by. After the Hyman sys takes a little bit of time. But those are the instances of the CD-ROM drivers and the sound card, which we'll address in a moment. Okay, so there is the information on the CD-ROM. And this is the VESA driver for that video chipset. So once you put the expansion VRAM in there, then you get that driver. And I can provide links to where that driver is. And it identifies that it's got the 512 KB of video RAM. And when I know my chips are loose in those sockets that I have, in those round sockets, it just identifies the 256K of video RAM. And it shows you the modes that it's capable of. And it's got it listed. Well, I guess one's 400 and the other one is 480. But it gives the ability to do like your Windows 3.1 in 256 color depth, even though the resolution doesn't change. And as I reported earlier, the video chip is the same on the 25SX, and that is with the integrated monitor. But going through, I also have the Windows driver loaded for this. Okay. And see, that's one of the other options that I've need to do soon is on this system is also I have the Microsoft TCP IP driver, so I could put a network card on this and get this connected online. And so in the main group, in the setup. And of course, you can run the setup from DOS as well. So for the display, I have that 640 by 480 by 256 colors, small fonts, 512K, IBM VGA 256C. And so we finally learn the name of that video chip. It's IBM VGA 256C. And also can provide a link for the driver for this video chipset as well. I'll do that in the video description. Here is the file manager with that big 3.2 gigabyte hard drive and the CD-ROM. So if I had a CD-ROM in the drive, I could go through and read that. And I do plan to put on a compact flash adapter on this to go to a solid state hard drive effectively, and with that LBA support through a mechanism that I'll show. Okay, so we're going to go through and exit out of Windows. And it turns out to be a rather decent video chipset. So let me cover, this is on the same video chip as on the 25SX. We'll go through, let me get the other. And I've shown the 25SX in the past in the inside, and it also has IDE on the planar. There was an intended mul of the PS2 mul 30SX, and this mul 35 was kind of misplaced, that unit, because it's a more capable unit. This is it operates from a 386SX at 20 megahertz. And so it displaced that plan 30SX unit that had the same planar as the mul 25SX to being the PS1 Pro 2123. And so that PS1 mul also has that same video chipset. I've previously said that that video chip is on the 8556 and 8557, the 8500 series of the mul 56 and 57 microchannel models. It is on the Thinkpad 700C and 720C. And it is on a microchannel adapter called the SVGA/A. And this is, the chip is numbered differently on this, but in that implementation, it has the full 512 KB of video RAM. And it's largely from this adapter. We saw that on my PS2 mul 85 K/N. I was reducing to a basic video configuration, and this is a good server level video card as well that IBM used. But it was the knowledge of this adapter that mainly opened up the door to understand where else the video chip was in place, on what systems. And it was just thought that IBM had put a basic VGA chip that was not really capable of anything more than 640 by 480 with 16 colors in the graphical modes. So I'll probably have to turn off the system here just to show some of the other upgrade aspects. And I can probably, I might even move the camcorder and the light out of the way, just because I can present things a little bit better with if I can do this, just to get it a step out of the way. And it's a little bit front heavy too. I don't want to bump it and get mouse cords untangled, so I can get in here. Okay, and bump this camera a little bit too. So I do have that 3.2 gigabyte drive on top, and that is from, and also show this sound card with the IDE channel. Okay, and that has a secondary IDE channel on it, but this is even a sound card that was commonly in Packard Bell systems. It's got a crystal chip in here. And the reason I've had these boards is for a reason. There's going to be a later microchannel sound card that I'm going to show of why I'm interested in this ISA adapter. I have a few of these around. And it doesn't have any jumper settings for the sound card portion of that. This is ultimately a plug-and-play sound card on ISA. And there are a number of these out there, of also sound cards that are ISA bus that are plug-and-play things. The jumpers on this board that are towards the side that I'm holding with the IDE cable, those are for saying that IDE channel as secondary and choosing the interrupt. This sound card is, all the configuration for the sound aspect is through plug and play. Now, I run the UNISOUND driver. That was one of the drivers that loaded when the system starts up, that you could look through, and you could see that those drivers loaded. And so that loads the sound driver component, but it also enables the secondary IDE channel that I've got connected to the CD-ROM. So UNISOUND works very good for these 35SX and 40SX mulls, adding sound plus a secondary IDE channel. Find the right card for it, you can do it. The long block addressing of the hard drive to run the bigger hard drive comes from this adapter. And I don't know if I've shown this. This works on the 25SX as well, very easily. And all that does is, and this can be replicated, and there are other assemblies, like just the ROM BIOS extension of the XT IDE adapter that can enable the same functionality. Now, I've tested this card with the 35SX and 40SX, and even though it works all the time with the single BIOS version that's on the 25SX, there are different BIOS versions in these chips for the 35SX and 40SX. An earlier BIOS, which is marked as version 6, does not function correctly with this board. There's a later version 10 that does work with this board. And clearly it's version 10 that I have on this planar. Glasses. And I might even need my magnifiers, so I'll have to see. And I mean to have these BIOS images up. I thought I did before, and I'll have to put them up. So the FRUs on this BIOS for version 10 are 04G G2021 is the odd EEPROM, and 04G2022 for the even. And I ought to mark on what size of EEPROMs those are. With the PS2s, it's they also have the ABIOS, and I can actually read, I think, on this one. Well, no, I can't quite see that identification. So on the version 6, which will not run with that board, it is 92F1502 is the even BIOS chip, and 92F1503 is the odd chip. And I'll go through and dump those, in particular the later BIOS version, as soon as I possibly can to get those up online, and can update the appropriate sections once I do. But that's a good show of how I've gone through and expanded this Model 35SX. I've gone through and expanded. I've got some Model 40SXs as well that I've also done the same sorts of upgrades to. And I'm not going through and upgrading the CPU. And that's a little bit more of a challenging process with a 386SX. And it's only 20 megahertz of speed. And there's not really a adapter or anything like that you can do like on the microchannel models to expand that CPU. I'm just looking at the time. It looks like we're a little bit over a half hour, and that's a good place. I mean, I've got, you can see the two SIMs I have in there of 8 megabyte apiece. It does have a third SIM slot that I have empty, but of course the 386SX can only see a maximum of 16 megabyte of RAM anyway. So this unit, and once I have it completed with the solid state drive, is, it's going to be a neat little system. Have that optical drive on it, have the video driver in place to a relatively low resolution of 640 by 480, but capable of that 256 color depth. And so ends up, and this, the chip is even known a little bit for game support. So there can be a potential for me, once I get the system going. I've had some of those other hard drives I've probed at that have had those games loaded on them, and be easy enough to a DOS game to transfer it over to this system. And I've got lots of room on that 3.2 gigabyte drive to put them in place. But that's just a little bit of overview. My video answer to that forum post. And yeah, get that up on the screen again. And I will go through to provide updates to this topic on VCF, to say, look, I've got the video up. You can watch it. So if you enjoyed this video, click on that like button. And by all means, subscribe to my channel if you have not already. But this is IBM Museum. That's all I have for now. Thank you.